Hey guys, today I wanted to update our 2020 electoral map based solely on polling data. So basically right here I have our 2020 election map, and so I will just be putting each state into Biden or Trump's category based on their polling averages. So the most solid margin is plus 15% for either candidate. That is a safe margin. A likely margin is between 7 and 15%. A lean margin is between 2 and 7%. And then anything less than 2% is a tilt margin, which is basically the lightest color. And then if there's no data out of the state where there's no polling averages, then it's going to be marked as yellow. And we will categorize these no data states at the end of this video. So I'm just going to go in alphabetical order. I think that this is the most efficient way to do it. So starting off with the state of Alabama, Trump leads by 17.8% in this state. Honestly, not a surprise, a very conservative state. I honestly expect it to be in the low 14s. However, it is 17% for Donald Trump in the state of Alabama. But what is surprising is the state of Alaska. Trump only leads by 5% here. He carried the state by 9% in 2016, but he does not seem to be doing too well in the state of Alaska in 2020. However, he is still expected to carry the state nonetheless. The state of Arizona, Biden leads by 4.8% here, pretty surprising as well, considering that this state has gone to a Republican in the last 2 decades, and that Donald Trump won this state in 2016 by over 3% over Hillary Clinton. However, Biden has been able to swing this state by over 7% in his favor, so Biden now does lead in the state of Arizona 11 very important electoral votes for a Biden victory. And next, the state of Arkansas, there really haven't been too many polls out of the state, so Trump really only leads by 2% based on the only poll here, so I'm just going to give it to him as a likely state. I think it's definitely going to go to Trump. I think definitely by a larger margin, but there's only one poll here, so I'm just going to have to use that. And then next is the state of California. Biden leads by 32.6%, one of the most liberal states in the entire country. It is probably the most liberal state besides Washington, D.C. and Massachusetts, but definitely California a solid state for Joe Biden. The state of Colorado, Biden leads by 14.6%, very close to getting that 15% solid margin, but he is 0.4% short, so a likely state for Joe Biden in the state of Colorado. And then the state of Connecticut, also a Biden state. Biden leads by 22.2%. Very solid for the Democrats in the Northeast. So definitely a solid Biden state. And then the state of Delaware, this is Joe Biden's home state. There's only been one poll released out of the state during the Democratic primaries. Biden led by 16%. It's definitely going to be bigger by now and bigger on election night. But it's the only poll I could find, so we're just going to have to use this, but it is still going to be a solid margin for Joe Biden in his home state of Delaware. He served as a senator here for over 36 years. He's won, countless elections here, 6 elections. He is definitely going to win in the state of Delaware. And then in the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C.'s 3 electoral votes. There's no data out of this state, but we're just going to categorize all of these states later. And then the state of Florida, Biden leads by 6.4%. Also pretty surprising, very close to being the likely margin for Joe Biden once again. The state of Florida also went to Donald Trump by 1.2% in 2016. It went to Barack Obama twice. However, Florida is always very close, so it's definitely surprising to see that Joe Biden has a 6% lead in a state such as Florida. Next, the state of Georgia. Georgia, very close race here. Trump only leads by 0.3%. Biden is making a gain in the polls here in the state of Georgia, but Donald Trump is still expected to win. I still think he's going to win. I think it's definitely going to become a very competitive swing state in 2024, 2028. With 2020, I think it's going to be pretty contentious, but I think at the end of the day, Trump is still going to come out on top in the state of Georgia. And then next, the state of Hawaii, really not too much polling data out of the state either. However, Joe Biden does have a 27-point lead over Donald Trump in the state of Hawaii, so definitely a safe state for the Biden campaign. And then the state of Idaho, no data from this state as well, and no data from the state of Illinois either. So basically, a lot of these states, the reason why there's no data, Illinois has a lot of people, a lot more than states like Alaska or Hawaii, but Illinois is a very strong Democratic state, so there really is no polling data out of this state. This is, of course, Barack Obama's home state. And next is the state of Indiana, 11 electoral votes. Trump leads by 13.3%. This is actually pretty good for Trump. He did not win the state by that large of a margin in 2016. This is Mike Pence's home state, his vice president. Mike Pence is not popular here, but I definitely think that having a former governor of your state running as the vice presidential candidate will boost your votes in that state. So Indiana, although Mike Pence wasn't popular, I think he is still benefiting Donald Trump in the state of Indiana. It really was a pretty important state in 2016. considering the fact that Barack Obama won it in 2008, lost it narrowly in 2012, so really it could have gone both ways in 2016, but 2020 Indiana is almost definitely going to be a GOP state. And then the state of Iowa, 6 electoral votes. Trump leads by 0.6%, a very small margin, considering the fact that he won this state by 9.5% in 2016. It's definitely a 9-point swing in favor of Joe Biden in the state of Iowa. So this is definitely very disappointing for the Trump campaign, and definitely they need to do a lot of work in that state. Next, state of Kansas, Trump leads by 8.2%, also a likely margin. This is a state that I would normally categorize as a solid Republican state. However, this time around, not really, just because of Trump's unpopularity. He's not doing too well in this state. For a Republican, he's doing well in this state, but for a Republican, he's not doing well at all. Next, the state of Kentucky, 8 electoral votes. This is Mitch McConnell's home state. Trump leads by 15.3% here, so a solid state for the president. He is doing better here than Mitch McConnell is in the Senate race against Amy McGrath, so Trump is definitely a little more popular here than some other states in the country. And then next, the state of Louisiana, 8 electoral votes. The state of Louisiana, I would normally categorize as a solid state. However, in this case, it is only a likely state. He only leads by 12% in the state of Louisiana, President Trump. So really, there are not too many solid Republican states at the moment. There really aren't too many solid Democratic states. However, some of these states that I would typically categorize as solid GOP states really are not solid on this map. And so next is the state of Maine. This state, Biden leads by 11% overall, so a likely margin. In the 1st district, he leads by 16% in the 1st district of Maine. So definitely I would have to categorize that as a solid margin in the 1st district. And then in the 2nd district, Biden leads by 1% here. So a tilt margin for Joe Biden in the 2nd district of Maine. Next is the state of Maryland. Maryland, a very progressive state. Biden leads by 24% here, right next to Washington, D.C. Definitely will go to Biden. The state of Massachusetts, the most liberal state, 33.5% in favor of Joe Biden. Elizabeth Warren's home state, definitely will go to Joe Biden. The state of Minnesota, Michigan. Michigan, Biden leads by 8.1% here. A state that went to Trump by less than 1% in 2016. Biden definitely seems to be doing very well in the state compared to Hillary Clinton, and he is expected to win this state at this point, so 8.1% in favor of Joe Biden in the state of Michigan. Next is the state of Minnesota. Biden leads by 5.8% here, so a lean margin. Honestly, this I expected to be a lot higher for Biden. He led by over 10% a couple of weeks ago. It has dropped down to around 5.8%, but still, this is a state that Hillary Clinton won by 1.5%, so Biden is still outperforming Clinton's 2016 margins in this state. Next is the state of Mississippi. Trump leads by 11.5% here, so a likely state, along with Arkansas, Louisiana. I think that they're not going too well for Trump in these two states, as you might have expected, but still a very unlikely Trump state nonetheless. And then the state of Missouri, Trump leads by only 4.7%. This was very surprising to see. This state went to Mitt Romney by over 10%. It was a solid state in 2012 for the GOP. Not too solid in 2016, but still a likely margin. However, in 2020, it is expected to be a lean margin for Donald Trump in the state of Missouri. But really, I see no chance of this state going to Joe Biden. But it's just disappointing for Trump to be only leading by 4% in such a state like Missouri. Next is the state of Montana. Trump leads by 8.3% here. This is another state that I would typically categorize as a solid GOP state. However, the state of Montana is only leading for Donald Trump by 8.3%, so I can't put it in that column yet. Next is the state of Nebraska. Honestly, there is not too much polling data out of these specific districts besides the 2nd district, so I'm just going to put them as all solid because he is leading by 15% statewide, so I'm going to give it to him as a solid state. But then in the 2nd district, it is definitely likely Biden district. He leads by 9% here, so the Nebraska overall vote, as well as the 1st and 3rd district, I'm going to give to Trump as solid margins, and then 2nd district as only a likely margin for Joe Biden. Next is the state of Nevada. This is a state that Hillary Clinton was not expected to win in 2016, but she did show in the state by 2.4%. Biden leads by 8% here, so a likely state for Joe Biden. Next, the state of New Hampshire. This state was a state that Hillary Clinton won by 0.4%. But now Biden leads by 9.3% here, so another very good sign for the Biden campaign. This puts him at 180 electoral votes. Next is the state of New Jersey, 20.8% in favor of Joe Biden, definitely a safe Democratic state in the Northeast, as well as the state of New Mexico, pretty solid for Biden right now, plus 14%, very close to that solid margin. I think it's going to vote very similar to Colorado, so a likely state for Joe Biden in the state of New Mexico. Next is the state of New York. Biden leads by 26.1%, so a solid state for the Biden campaign. And then the state of North Carolina, Biden leads by 1.9% here, so a tilt margin for the vice president. I think that the state of North Carolina is going to be very close, like Georgia, but I think at the end of the day, Biden is going to flip the state of North Carolina. The state of North Dakota, no surprises here. Trump leads by 21%, very conservative state. Trump is definitely going to win the state of North Dakota. And then in the state of Ohio, Biden leads by 0.2%. So, like North Carolina, it's going to be a tilt state for Biden in the state of Ohio. And then in the state of Oklahoma, solid state for President Trump, 22% in his favor. He led his first rally in Tulsa, his first rally after the lockdown began all over the country in the state of Oklahoma. He leads by 22% here. The state of Oregon, there's no data out of this state. The state of Pennsylvania, this is Joe Biden's birth state. He leads by 6.4%, so a lean state for Biden. This is also a state that went to Donald Trump in 2016 by less than 1%. And so looking at this map here, this is by Joe Biden over 270 electoral votes, so no surprises here. Biden's going to win the election based on polling data. Next, state of Rhode Island, no data out of Rhode Island either. And then state of South Carolina, Trump leads by 5.8%, so also a lean state for the president, another state that I think he's underperforming in 2020. State of South Dakota, no data either. South Dakota, no data, so I'm going to put it in the yellow column. The state of Tennessee, Trump leads by 11.1%, second likely state for him. A little bit of a disappointment here as well. The state of Texas, Trump, this is the biggest disappointment in my opinion. Trump leads by 0.8% in this state, a state that he won by over 8% in 2016, and a state that no Democrat has won since Jimmy Carter in 1976, but Trump has only a 0.8% lead in a state like Texas. This was referred to as the GOP's California, but really not anymore. California is a solid state. Biden leads by 32% in the state of California, while Trump in the Republican California leads by 0.8%. He was even behind for the polls for a very long time a couple of weeks ago, but now he is retaking the lead, and a very slight lead over Joe Biden in the state of Texas. The state of Utah, he leads by 10.3%, so a likely state, of course. And then the state of Vermont, there's no data out of the state of Vermont. The state of Virginia, Biden leads by 11.4%, so another likely state in the Biden column. State of Washington, definitely solid for the Democrats. The state of West Virginia, also a very solid GOP state. Trump leads by 36% in this state. And then in the state of Wisconsin, Biden leads by 7.1%. This is one of the most important states in the entire election, but it is, of course, a likely margin now for Joe Biden in probably the most important state in the entire election. And lastly, the state of Wyoming, there's no data out of this state. So looking at this map, basically one thing I want to talk about is how in my election prediction videos, this is exactly why I put states like Montana, Utah, and Alaska not in the solid Republican column. I typically don't put Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, or Mississippi in the solid column, including Indiana and South Carolina. This is just because he is not doing too well in these states, and although polling data does not, say who's going to win, but it is definitely a very good indicator, and polling has definitely improved from 2016. So now Joe Biden has 316 electoral votes to Donald Trump with 175, and there are 47 electoral votes worth from states with no data, so just going to fill them in right now. They are very, very solid for either party. Oregon, very solid for the Democrats. Illinois, very solid Democratic state, Barack Obama's home state. New Hampshire, definitely, Vermont, definitely very solid for Biden. Connecticut, Rhode Island, very solid. And Washington, D.C., through electoral votes, District of Columbia, very solid for Joe Biden. While these other three states, Idaho, Wyoming, and South Dakota, are all very solid states for the president. So looking at our final electoral map here, Joe Biden would win the election with 353 electoral votes based solely on polling data, and Donald Trump would win 185 electoral votes. So definitely a very good sign for the Biden campaign. Again, he has basically been staggering in his lead, but such a large lead that it is very good for Biden to see that his lead has not been shrinking over time. And so if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel as well as leaving a like. We are very close to reaching 400 subscribers, so I'd really appreciate it if you could help me reach that goal. Comment your thoughts down in the comment section below, as well as any video suggestions you'd like to see in the future, and I will see you in the next video.